On Sunday, January 26, 2020, a Sikorsky S-76B helicopter crashed in Calabasas, California, around 30 miles northwest of Los Angeles. There were 9 people on the flight, and one of them was legendary professional basketball player Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant joined the NBA right out of high school, and his fans watched him play 20 straight seasons of exceptional basketball with the same team for his entire career. For 20 years, we watched his signature moves, his work ethic, and even his facial expressions. At the news of his passing, it felt like the entire world took a collective gasp and forgot to breathe. We were all visibly wearied and even gutted at the loss of Kobe and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. He was a part of the tapestry of our lives for 20 years. We grew up with him, laughed with him, cried with him. We cheered for him. And even on very rare days, we even lost with him. So how is it possible, with feelings this real, that he never knew us? A parasocial relationship is the kind of relationship that only exists on one side of the relationship. All the emotional energy and the interest and the time is coming from just one party. The other party is completely uninvolved. It's a kind of relationship we cultivate watching someone for 20 years who's never seen us. It's a fixation. We all agree on it socially, and we never expect it to become complementary. We don't just get into parasocial relationships around teams and organizations and celebrities. It's also very possible to be in a parasocial relationship with God. My name is Shauna Knox, and this is Further, where we explore the real Christ and the real you. The way to life is extremely narrow, and very few of us ever find it. But let's keep looking. We'll do it together. We loved Kobe. We watched him. We read about him. We talked about him. We formed real attachments to Kobe Bryant in our hearts. But Kobe Bryant never knew us. Is that possible with God? Can we build lives and dedicate decades to socializing around the idea of him without him ever knowing us? The answer is simple. Absolutely. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23, it says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. There aren't other words in the Bible that haunt me more than those 4 words. I never knew you. If there's one thing I want to accomplish in my life, it is this: to know God and to be known by Him. In days gone by, parasocial relationships were understood as a pathological symptom of either loneliness or isolation or social anxiety. But these days, parasocial relationships are very commonplace. We nurture them very easily through socially interdependent interactions, like church. They make us feel like we're increasing intimacy and the strength of the relationship, even if the relationship doesn't really exist. Even though parasocial relationships are one-sided, the people who are engaged in them feel real feelings of affection and gratitude and longing and encouragement and loyalty. So how can any of us really be sure that our relationship with God is reciprocal? How will we know if it's two-sided? Well, let's consider. The Apostle Paul wrote 2 statements to 2 different churches that aptly addresses what our posture should be when we're considering this question. When he wrote to the church at Corinth, he said, "Let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed, lest he fall." He also wrote to the church at Philippi saying, "My beloved, even though you have always obeyed, work out your salvation with fear and trembling." So we should always be ensuring that our relationship with God has 2 sides. There's a trap that we can fall into, and it lures us into a false sense of security. It's this idea that talking about God means that you know each other, or engaging in church activities means that you know each other. And frankly, the list could go on. But my point here is there is no substitute for truly knowing God and being known by Him. Your church, your activities, your groups, your pastor, none of them will suffice. None of them can mediate. There is only one mediator of that relationship between you and God, and He is Christ Jesus. So if you don't know Christ, you can't know God. It's time for us to do an examination. We need to really look at our relationship with God to see if it has 2 sides. Is your relationship with God mediated by events, obligations, habits, activities? Or are you in an active and engaging dialogic with Christ? I was absolutely in a parasocial relationship with God for a very long time. From what I knew of God, there were things He wanted me to do, so I did them. And I listened to other people who were doing those things talk about their experience of doing those things. And that was the extent of my relating with Him. I related to people in their experience of doing things He asked them to do. It wasn't until He started attuning me to His emotions that I actually began responding in real time to God as a living being rather than a book of rules. I noticed when He shared something with me and I repeated it, but it was really just meant for us. I started to notice when I was rushing away from him because I'd gotten what I wanted and he was feeling the loss of me. I noticed when I only came to him to use him to get something for someone else, and I could tell he missed having me around the way I used to be when all I had was him. I noticed that my great, strong, majestic God could be saddened by me when I didn't listen, when I hurt myself, when I hurt him. When I started engaging not just with his words, but with his feelings, I learned more than I ever did before about myself and about his true nature in ways that words just could never communicate. Parasocial relationships aren't really relationships. They look like relationships. They even feel like relationships, but they're more like movies because nothing's on the other side. Jesus warns us that it's very possible to really believe you have a Lord while not knowing him or being known by him at all. As many games as we watched Kobe play, we never really knew him. We just watched his games. Kobe's biggest fan, who knows all his plays, all his stats, all of his history, he still can't know Kobe Bryant, and he could never know him that way. What Jesus is saying in Matthew 7 is, if by some incredible happenstance, Kobe and his biggest, most dedicated fan were ever to meet, for all of that fan's diligence and attentiveness, Kobe would be staring into the eyes of a stranger. God doesn't have fans. He has children. And your relationship with him isn't a matter of groupthink or crowd camaraderie or spectatorship. If it is, it's empty, and he doesn't know you. So this week, let's face the music together. Does the Lord know you? If he doesn't, are you ready to let him know you? He wants to know you, but only you can make that choice. For my believers, what's mediating your relationship with God? If it isn't Jesus, just Jesus, it's time to do some refining. And for all of us, if we're sure our relating with him is in fact two-sided, let's be careful lest we fall. Relationships are living organisms. They're either growing or dying. We have to cultivate this relationship every single day. Are you cultivating a growing relationship with God? Let's approach him together, the one who put his breath in our lungs and whispered us into being, the one who ordained and wrote every one of our days in his book before there was even one of them. He knows what we need to hear to know he's listening, to know he's there, to know he wants to know us. Now unto you, Lord, speak. Until next time, grace and peace.